Here I am, getting ready. What are we talking about, Déa?
Oh, let's see. I don't know. What are you preparing to do here? You look like you're exercising, or what are you doing?
I'm getting ready for the fight. That's what we're talking about, right?
That's right. We're talking about conflict resolution today. Now, I
Relationship
don't have
conflict.
boxing gloves. I have boxing gloves, so my style may be a little different than yours when it comes to, getting ready to fight. So we're going to discuss that today. We're going to discuss the different styles. We're going to discuss why is important, what is conflict, the things that we need to talk about, the serious breakdown of conflict resolution.
I'm gonna try to tag you on the video because Zoom isn't integrated very well. So, yes, please, Déa, will you introduce the Courageous Love series that we're doing, and what we're talking about today a little bit more while I tag you?
Yes. So we're here today. My name is Déa. I'm a women's empowerment coach, marriage and family and divorced women's coach. I work with couples and people in general, men and women. And today I'm joining Coach Daniel Robertson in his um, Courageous Love series. This is a series of 4 sessions, and we will be discussing different topics. We're even open to suggestions, although we have a list of things that we're going to be talking about today. I mean, for the next 4 sessions. Today, we're discussing conflict resolution and also some of other subjects that stem from that same place. In other words, conflict resolution. We're going to talk maybe a little bit about vulnerability. We might talk a little bit about emotional intimacy, things that are kind of tied to the language of conflict, whether it involves trauma, triggers, our past experiences. So it's a full overview of what conflict resolution is.
Déa, Facebook is not letting me tag you, and it's driving me
That's okay.
crazy.
Don't worry
Come on,
about it. I
Facebook.
see. I can, you know what I'll do? I see here, I'm going to share it on my page. I can do that on my feed.
Okay.
Okay. So even though I'm not tagged, I can put it on my personal page. Um, I'm sharing that there. And then I'm going to
Okay.
try to share it on my other page, which is Coach Déa. So I'm sharing in both. I
Okay.
love technology for that reason because I'm doing it over here on my phone.
Great. 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 So thank you, Facebook. To everybody who's watching, yeah, you need to follow Coach Déa. She's most active on Instagram. So check her out on Instagram. And she's a women's empowerment coach. She works with married couples, with families, with divorced women, with trauma healing. Oh my gosh, isn't that so needed? If you listen to Dr. Gabor Mate right now, talking about how trauma has really impacted us, not only in our emotional lives, but in our physical lives, speaking as a physician. So today we will talk about relationship conflict and how, here's the thing. One of the questions I'll ask you is conflict a bad thing? And um, really, it's not so much about the conflict itself, but how we handle the conflict. And you're so good at talking about that, Coach Déa. So can you speak to that? Is conflict a bad thing?
No, well, first of all, that's a great question. Conflict is actually, in my opinion, and my humble opinion, necessary for growth. Because conflict, as we can say, we can call it a storm, a challenge, a barrier. And without a barrier, there is no breakthrough. So I believe that when we work through our conflicts, and it depends on how, it's not the fight, it's how we fight. I'm sure you've heard the term, it's not about the storm, it's how we dance in the rain, right? So I think that in the process of learning how to navigate through conflict, we need to have a certain language, a certain demeanor, a certain appreciation for being human. All of those things are elements and we can go into it as we discuss further. But before we go further, could you tell people who you are as well? Because some of my audience might not know who you are and what you do. I'd love for them to get to know you.
Well, thanks. Yes, my name is Daniel Robertson. I'm active on Facebook, so definitely connect with me here on Facebook. I'm an attorney turned relationship coach. So I love that we're talking about conflict today because conflict resolution is what my background is all about. That's how I got to where I am today and got to teach it or doing relationship coaching. So just so you know, I have two communities on Facebook. I have the Dealing with an Avoidant Partner community, which is a free supportive community for people who want to deal with, want to learn how to be in relationship with people who have more avoidant tendencies. And I also have the Courageous Love community, which is a paid membership group coaching community. And just so you know, I'll plug it right now, is we have two free group coaching sessions coming up on Monday and Tuesday next week for the Courageous Love community. This is all about finding the love within so that we can achieve lasting happiness. And if you would like more information on that, send me a DM on Facebook. And just so you know, Facebook limits my ability to DM you, but you can probably DM me. So I would love to hear from you. And that's who I am, Daniel Robertson. And I'm so thankful to be meeting some new people and to be able to enjoy Dea's audience. If you know Dea's content, she is so thoughtful and peaceful and positive, such a light in people's life. So that means that she's going to attract people like that. And so I'm so thankful to be able to meet some new people from your audience, Coach Dea.
Wonderful. And I also wanted to say that likewise, I admire your work, and obviously I have more contact with your content on Instagram because that's where I'm mostly active. But I have to say the beauty about what the work that you do is that you're not afraid of being vulnerable. I think one of the first posts that I saw from you, it struck me. It was you talking about the vulnerability in men, and it's a conversation that we don't hear very often. And I think it's so needed, especially because if we learn how to teach others as coaches that it's okay to be vulnerable, particularly for the men who sometimes they feel unseen, sometimes they don't feel heard. And they do have feelings as you have expressed. It may come as a surprise to many people, but men have feelings and men need to be validated just like women. Men worry about the way they look just like women, and something that I was even not aware until very recently. So I think there's a lot that you offer that is there are learning points, learning tools that women can benefit from. I always like to work and do these collaborations with male coaches because I love the other perspective. From a male perspective, it's so important. Women often they flock to the tribe of women to get the answers to their questions. And when I looked for help in my personal life, I went to a male coach because I said, I want to hear what he has to say. How does he see what happened to me from a male perspective? And I can't tell you how validated that was. So thank you for what you do.
I appreciate that. And I'm really happy today that we can bring a male and female perspective. I think that's what's really exciting about today. And you are exactly right, because women, I'm going to be kind of bold and make a bold statement here. Women have no idea how much power you have over a man's emotions. Like I'm in a men's divorce support community with over 3,000 men. You have no idea how devastated and heartbroken these men are when their wives leave them. They are so heartbroken. And women, a good woman can really lift a man up, and a woman who's unfortunately expressing herself in less healthy ways can really bring a man down. And it goes both ways. The man can affect her emotions, but we don't really have a hard time acknowledging that women are emotional. We don't have a hard time acknowledging that. Men, we have deep emotional lives, but we're conditioned and taught not to express it, not to show it. So you think that we don't. But yeah, there's so much depth to talk about there. But thank you very much for recognizing that, Coach Dea. And I'm really glad we can bring a male-female perspective today. And for those of you who are watching, the reason why I'm looking over here is because I have Facebook on my screen over here. Drop some comments down, bring us your questions. You have a free live coaching opportunity. So, normally you have to pay for this. So get your questions answered right now live.
Right.
We would love to hear from you. We would love to interact with you. We want to bring you what's valuable to you. So, Coach Dea, do you want to start with talking about what happens when a couple comes to you and they're stuck in conflict? What's going on? What are the barriers to them working through it, and how do you help them work through it?
Well, what's interesting is the first phase of explaining what's going on, it always starts with the blaming. It's the blaming game. He said this, she said this, and then we go from there. Now, in a conversation with you prior, we discussed that how that can either help or hurt the session. I always find that it's important to acknowledge and make time for that, what I call discovery of what's going on, some inventory of where are the dots, where are the I's. We need to see who said what and what could have happened that caused what's going on. Um, and I think that it's important because it allows us to have a point of reference. Let's look at what happened and go from here, move forward. Now, we can't stay stuck on that very long. Normally, what I do is I suggest that me as a mediator can look at some of the things that are going on and suggest or ask questions as to why that might have happened, or, and then they start thinking. They go from the place of feeling to the place of thinking. Because when they're feeling, it's like they're in it, they're caught in it, maybe not feeling to the extent of what they felt when it was going on in the past, but when they start talking about it, I always warn them beforehand. This session might be a little triggering. If at any point you need to take a step back, let me know. This is going to be a difficult session. I always prepare them. And then if that happens, okay, time out. Let's keep moving forward. So I start asking them questions. When I start asking them questions, now they're thinking. They will, hold on, let me think about this for a second. And I would say to them, tell me what you think happened. Tell me how you think we could resolve this. Now they have to come up with answers. And it's not that I can't help them with the answers. Most of the time I know what I need to do, but the objective is to get them engaged in taking responsibility and accountability for what's going on. And more times than not, they will say, yeah, I can see where I could have said it differently. Or, yeah, I could have, I didn't think about in the moment. And then I'll ask them real questions that I want to know. You see, because there was a time when there was a conflict, and one of my clients, he kept saying she didn't say the things that she wanted to say, that I wish she would say the true feelings, which were that she wanted to be with me. And my question to him was, did you need to hear that? And he went, well, at the time I didn't think so, but now I think I did. Yeah, I needed to hear that. So you see, the problem wasn't her language, was that he needed validation. He needed validation, and he didn't get the validation. And it was hard for him to acknowledge that he needed her. You see? So it's oftentimes the problem isn't really that clear. We get entangled in the reasons and the blame and what was said and how I feel and how it made me feel. And I feel some type of way, as they say now these days, the language, right? I feel some type of way. That means you're not feeling good. Okay? Some type of way usually translates into I'm triggered and my traumas just took the room and now I'm all over the place. So I think that's how anyway, to answer your question, that's how I proceed with trying to resolve some of these issues that come up. And yes, they will start with the blame game right off the bat.
Absolutely. Yeah, I see the same exact thing. And what I explain to people, I try to find ways to boil this down to the most simple elements. And I explain it like this. When we are focused on who is right and who is wrong, we will stay stuck in conflict. When we change our focus and bring our attention to what is alive, what is my partner experiencing in their tender heart, we feel connected and we can find the way out of conflict. We can learn the skills then to get out of conflict and find solutions together. That 100%. Is the shift.
100%. And something that I like to say, and the reason for that is that when we're stuck in placing blame, we're looking at ourselves as the victim. Okay. When we are more open to understanding what happened, I often say, when we're fighting about something, we're not really fighting about that something anymore. What happens is we shift into how we're fighting, how we're engaging, how we're feeling, because they didn't say it in a loving way, or at least we didn't think they said it. Or they may be thinking, I come from love, but it doesn't feel like love to me, you see? And so we lose sight of each other's love language. And so for me, conflict resolution is when you're pursuing a solution, you should be pursuing each other's heart. And that's not a romantic experience, okay? I don't want to get people mistaken here. We're not talking about lovemaking. We're not talking about being romantic. We're not talking about forget about what happened. Here's a bouquet of flowers. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that pursuing each other's heart involves looking at love as a decision, an action, and a choice. Like you said, we have now the facts. This is what happened. What can we do to solve this? How do we approach each other? What's the appropriate way, really, from a language perspective, how to talk to your partner, understanding that if I know that my partner feels misunderstood because I said a certain language that might have reminded of the past that somebody who treated him poorly, I'm going to be more mindful next time. Or we're going to get to the point where he understands that that's not what I'm doing because I'm not that person from the past. You see, unfortunately, we carry that backpack, right, of what was done to us. And 9 times out of 10, we put it on in the morning, whether we want to admit it or not. Okay. Even if we're not arguing with our partners, when we go to work, when we go to the store, we put that thing on and it's on and we don't even know it's there. It's so subconscious. But again, pursuing each other's heart means that you're going to make the choices that will support what I call complementarianism, which is a process of accepting that you're going to agree to disagree. That's where you get to compromise. That's where you get to choose to yield to your partner. Okay. Some days you're going to be more triggered than your partner. And some days you're going to be the one who has to be the bigger person. Okay. You're going to take turns. If you're both working towards understanding each other and supporting one another, you're going to have to you'll take turns. You will end up taking turns. No one's going to feel left out. Okay. The question is, how do we get there? Right. And this is why we as coaches have the ability to guide them, give them strategies, give them tools, learn new ways of communicating.
I love that. I got news for everybody. It's not about the dishes. It's not about the dishes. You're not arguing about the dishes. You're arguing about something else. It could be, do I feel loved? Do I feel appreciated? Do I feel like I have any power and control in this relationship, or the other person has all the power and control? Do I feel like I'm doing all the giving and they're doing all the taking? That's what it's about. It's not about the dishes. And I'm going to say something else. I'm going to throw a bomb in here, okay? This is, I hesitate to do this. I kind of like, sometimes I don't want to get controversial, but when it comes to physical intimacy, it's not about the physical intimacy. And I'll say something for men, and this is, of course, this is a gender stereotype, so it's not true for everybody. And some genders, some situations are, it's a swapped scenario. But the physical intimacy for a man is an expression of love. It's an expression of love and connectedness. So it's not about the physical intimacy. It's about the love and connectedness. You hear Terry Crews. In fact, Terry Crews, the actor, hilarious guy, super masculine dude. He's got a video that's super viral on Instagram about how it's not about the physical intimacy. It's about, do I feel emotionally intimate and connected and loving, like I have a loving relationship with my partner? Mm-hmm. So it's not about the dishes. It's not about the physical intimacy. It's not about the socks on the floor. It's not about, we could go on and on, right? It's not about how to load the dishwasher the right way. Who cares?
Could I piggyback on that, since you're saying you said it from a male perspective and from a woman's perspective, and this is again a general, because not everybody's the same, but generally speaking, for the woman, lovemaking does not start in the bedroom. It starts in the kitchen when you're doing the dishes, or maybe your husband or your partner came in from behind and gave you a hug and kissed you on the neck. For us, we need to feel loved to be physical. For men, physical is how they feel loved, right? And these are general concepts that, of course, there is somewhere between here and there. There are people that are different, or there are men that are more like women, or women that are more like men when it comes to how they express that. And the reason why I think it's important, Daniel, that you brought that up is because here we're talking about how men and women may be different in their styles of resolving conflict. Sometimes it is cultural, sometimes it's gender related, sometimes it has to do with their past, their upbringing. What are their core values? What do they believe in? All of those things are going to play a part in how they take part in resolving conflict. And even though what the issue might be may not be at hand, and most of the time, by the time you're done with the argument, you're not really even worried about what the problem was to begin with. We are more concerned, we're more affected by the way we're expressing ourselves towards one another. We're fighting about how we're fighting. Okay. So again, going back to conflict resolution being very important, it's telling of where you are, where you're coming from. People come as they are. And in a moment of a fight or a moment of a misunderstanding, when people are triggered, they may not be necessarily triggered by what's going on in the moment. It's just that that moment reminded them of something that was done to them in the past. And so now we're coming in with a perception as opposed to accepting that we're discussing about maybe being more open to a new perspective. I may come to you and say, hey, I have a new idea. And you're like, oh, that she's gonna put me down. What my idea wasn't good enough? Well, I remember like they did that to me when I was in such and such job. My idea was never good enough. You see how our minds can tell us things. So don't believe everything is your mind is tell. Don't believe everything you think in the moment sometimes, especially when you're triggered. Um, I had an experience that that actually happened to me, right? Because even though we're coaches, we're also human beings living real life in real time. And I had a conversation with my fiance, and I said, you know, what's interesting is I could have warned you. I knew I was triggered by something that had nothing to do with what you said, but it reminded me of that. And so I learned something. I learned next time I am feeling some type of way, I'm going to state that it's not because you said it, because I know you didn't mean to say it, but it made me remember something from the past, and I am actually triggered, because that allows the other person to then show up differently and not feel defensive and say, oh my gosh, what is going on? What happened? Can you tell me what happened? You see, the same thing I do with my clients. In the moment they may be triggered talking about a past experience, and when I start them to brainstorm with me, I start asking them questions and they start going, oh, you see. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
100%. I totally agree with you. Such good observations and insights about what's really going on when we're in relationship conflict. I see we have one comment. I'm waiting for people to send your questions. Drop your questions below. I thought maybe this would be a good time to share that story I just shared with you, Dea, about the husband and the wife and their disagreement. So
Yes.
this is a good illustration, I think, of what we're talking about how we get stuck in conflict. So, and then how we find our way out. So I was interacting with the woman, and she was sharing about a disagreement she had with her husband. He wanted to have another child. They only had one daughter together. He wanted to have another child, and she did not. And she came to the conclusion that he just did not care about her. So I asked some questions. I wanted to dig deeper and find out what was going on. And I asked her, I said, well, what is it? Why don't you want to have another child? And she shared with me that, well, having another child means a difficult pregnancy, the pain of going through childbirth, followed by postpartum depression. And then after all that, she would have all this added work. She wouldn't get to go to her job that she would enjoy. She would have all this extra work of having a baby. She would be exhausted. And then she would not be able to show up as a loving and attentive wife and mother to her husband and her child. It's like, what beautiful thing she wants. She doesn't want to go through pain. She doesn't want to go through postpartum depression. She wants to show up as a loving and attentive mother. What beautiful things, what beautiful yearnings are coming from her heart. So then I said, well, what is going on for the husband? What does having another child mean to him? And I found out that what another child means to him is that their daughter who they have will never be lonely because she won't have to be an only child. Their daughter will always have a friend, and they will be able to create a family legacy together by having more children, a family legacy that he wanted to build together with his bride who he loved. And I thought, that's what having another child means to him. Well, where did the husband who doesn't care about his wife go? I didn't hear about it. So I understand why she felt that way, because she felt like the way he was expressing himself, he was not expressing that he saw her heart. So she felt like he didn't care about her.
Right.
But what was really happening, all I could see was a mother and a wife with beautiful desires and yearnings from her heart, and a man, a husband and a father with beautiful desires and yearnings from his heart. So if we can see the yearnings of our tender hearts, then we come to that place. And what do these people want? Two people who want beautiful things for their family. Where did the people who don't care about each other go? Where did the conflict go? Now we can just talk about solutions. So now, from this place of connectedness where we see each other's hearts, now we can talk about solutions. Well, okay, your daughter, you don't want your daughter to have loneliness. She wanted to always have friends. Can we live in a neighborhood where she'll have lots of friends? Can she be part of school programs where she'll have lots of friends? Can she, or extracurriculars? Or can we create a family legacy by creating a foundation, a nonprofit foundation? Can we create a family legacy by adopting another child and bringing another child into the family? Or for the mother, if the mother's willing to think about what could she do, what if they were able to have a nanny to help take some of the burden off the mother's back when the child was born, to help her? What if they were able to talk with a doctor about, is there a way to prevent postpartum depression in my situation? I don't know, I'm not a doctor, I can't say that, but I'm saying it's a question we can ask and we could explore from a place of connectedness in our tender hearts. Then we can explore all these options. And what we were really fighting about beforehand was, he wanted his heart to be seen, she wanted her heart to be seen. But instead of paying attention to each other's hearts, instead they were paying attention to who's right and who's wrong. And that was blocking them and keeping them stuck. So that's the way I look at conflict. And when you talk about, Coach Déa, I love the way you talk about pursuing each other's hearts. That's the way I see it.
No, that's wonderful. And you know what? I actually, when you illustrated that conversation, and remember I mentioned to you that when you start with a client, they start placing blame or saying how they're feeling. That's what's front and center for them. This is why we take the inventory. See, when you went to them and asked them, why is that? Now we're starting to see factually what's happening, not the story about what's happening. See, they had desires and ideas and things that served them or didn't serve them. I think that also this couple in particular shows extreme awareness of what their goals were. And I think that's the beauty of it, is that when we start to talk about it, people 9 times out of 10, and I know I say that a lot because it's what happens, most people can express what they're feeling if they're guided in the right direction. This is why I encourage people to get help. I encourage people to find the tribe that's equipped to help them, whether it be a psychotherapist, a psychologist, or a counselor, or a coach like we are. I think that it's so important to have the right guidance, because that same lady could have gone to a friend and bashed her husband. He doesn't love me. He doesn't. And then they start developing that part of us. I think all of us have done this at some point in time in our lives, called toxic venting. We talk about something and the problem never resolves. You kind of stay stuck in that place. And from that, you start believing things that are not even happening. It's so important to have the clarification. And I also love the fact that you said that, when we started to see the reason of why they wanted to either have the baby or not have the baby, we started to see that there was a place for them to come up with the solutions that worked for both of them, something that could be a compromise of sorts, right? So maybe isn't having the baby. Maybe we could adopt a child and eliminate all the postpartum, all the pain of pregnancy and everything. It is just going to be equally as important to have. Or like you said, maybe we can move to a neighborhood where there are more children, and they can, our daughter will always have a best friend or some friends and create a community of people. There are so many things that we can do when we know more. You see, when we're willing to let our guard down, when we're willing to be vulnerable, when we're willing to say, okay, these are my reasons, but I see what you're saying. I see you're feeling what you're feeling. I see that you're feeling put off by something that maybe to me, I don't have access to. Oftentimes, especially when as a young mom, men don't understand. No offense to them. I mean, it's not their fault, but men may not understand. Maybe they understand scientifically what happens when a woman gets pregnant and it takes 9 months to get to the full pregnancy, right? Most people aren't in the presence in the moment that the body of the woman is rewinding. And it'll take probably more than 9 months to rewind to where it was. So on top of dealing with all of the stresses, we're dealing with hormonal things. And our bodies are it's like having little people punching us from the inside, everywhere. It hurts everywhere. So it takes us some time to get back to ourselves. And oftentimes, especially in this particular situation, women tend to feel robbed of their freedom in a weird way. We love being moms. Listen, I'm a mom of 5. I love my kids, but I did not enjoy when they were sick. I felt like, it's so hard. It's so hard. And we go through so much. And the men, obviously, they go to work or they provide. And in that in itself, because of what we've talked about before, the vulnerability part of the exchange is where I think couples may suffer because of the way the way society has us, right? And we've mentioned in the live before that, women can be vulnerable and express pain and emotion, but men aren't really, people don't receive that as much, like men are what, supposed to be robots? Like you said, men have feelings, and some people don't believe that they should even express that. Can you talk about that a little bit? I loved what you said earlier, so I wanted people to get that part of the live that we did on Instagram.
Yeah. Okay. That's such a big topic about, do men have feelings? And I think I touched on this when we started talking. But yeah, I mean, women don't realize often, I'm saying that sometimes women don't realize how much of an impact that they have on a man's emotions. But yes, men have deep emotional lives. Now, there are a lot of men who become more emotionally avoidant. It's a common coping mechanism that a lot of men use to deal with emotions because for whatever reason, maybe as children or whatever, they learned that their emotions weren't welcome. And the message that they get is, your feelings don't matter. Your job is to show up, do your job. You need to provide for your family. Your worth comes from your ability to provide. A lot of men get this message. I got a slightly different message, I'll say. So I do hear this, but a lot of men got this message. Your worth comes from your ability to provide. And they think they will often go to jobs that are exhausting, that are mentally, emotionally, physically exhausting. And they think, because my job is to provide, that me providing makes me a good partner. And they may have emotionally shut down because they were told that their feelings didn't matter, and their job is to show up and go to work and do their job. And what ends up happening then is, especially with the female partner, but it could happen in a homosexual relationship as well, is the other partner is wanting the emotional connection. But that man who is told that his feelings don't matter has shut down his emotions. So he's not able to connect. And he's told that he's supposed to provide. So he's providing. And then she's not connecting with him, and she's upset, and she's saying, like, I want to connect with you. And he's like, why are you upset with me? I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And so she's feeling shut out. He's feeling unfairly accused. And this is just because this is what society has taught, and families of origin and cultures have taught to a lot of men. And other men will go more into their head. So you'll hear men, and some people who have more technical, maybe like engineering, have more of a tendency, or analytical minds, more tendency to go into their head. I used to be like that. I went into my head as a coping mechanism because I was a really sensitive child, but I was also an intelligent child. And so I was able to go into my head. And what that felt like was, I had lots of awareness about what I thought. I had lots of awareness about what I believed. I had really good skills at problem solving, but I had no awareness of what my feelings were and no idea how to process my feelings. And so if a woman came to me and said she wasn't connecting with me, I had no clue what she meant. So I had to learn as a man to become embodied. Oh my gosh, I have this whole body full of emotions that I need to become aware of. Once I practiced that, which started with just journaling, I set my timer every 15 minutes for 2 weeks. And every 15 minutes, I journal. What am I feeling right now? What am I doing? What am I feeling right now? And oh my gosh, I was like, oh my gosh, I have this whole world of feelings that I had no idea I was even feeling. And I became more embodied. And when I did, oh my gosh, there was a lot of pain there that I had to go through. There was a lot of things that I didn't want to face that I had to go through. But It made it so that I could connect with people in a new way. And the thing is with men is if we are not intentional, we will fall into the default. The default is disconnected from our emotions, push our emotions down. Maybe the only emotions that are allowed are happy and angry for a lot of men. Happy and angry are okay, but nothing else is allowed. And so if we're unintentional, we will fall into that default. If we want to break out of that, as men especially, we have to be very intentional about becoming aware of our emotions and learning how to deal with them.
Very good. This is so rich. Once something that came up as you're speaking, and you spoke about being intentional and having access to your feelings and emotions. And once you learn that, then it's a whole new process begins, right? Of self-acceptance, and all of this plays a part. Conflict resolution, oftentimes when we're dealing with partners, even in relationships in general, what becomes an issue is that also people have a different style of resolving conflict. So one person is more avoidant, they need to go in a room and self-soothe. The other person is anxious, they need to talk about it, they want the answer right now. Well, there's going to be a conflict in itself just because they have different styles. Not to say that they can't come to a common ground, okay? To learn how to accept each other's style, understanding the other person. And therefore, like you said with the couple, start putting together a list of steps they can take in order to yield to one another simultaneously. Obviously, they're going to take turns in compromising. People need to become comfortable with being uncomfortable, also understanding that they're not always going to agree, and that those disputes do not have to become wars between people. That's what we try to navigate when we talk about healthy communication, is if you have an understanding, first of all, what your needs are, you're in touch with your feelings, you can access those, maybe not even in a perfect way, but you still try, you make the attempt to understand yourself, you're more likely to understand your partner. And then, even in the communication style, agree to a certain commitment, which involves, okay, let's agree to meet such date, and let's talk about, maybe we can talk about it right now, let's just regroup tomorrow night at 6, let's over dinner, let's discuss something. Okay. And I think that's where the process of conflict resolution begins, in a way that is about commitment, accountability, and trust. Because trust in a relationship oftentimes involves talking about being faithful, not faithful. What people fail to see is that trust is a safe place. It's a place that you can be vulnerable with that person. You see, you can come and speak of your feelings in a way that it's not going to be turned against you. It's not going to be weaponized. When you have trust, accountability, responsibility, you are communicating in a healthy way, because you're allowing yourself to be, okay, I know that we have some issues here, some conflicts. We could talk about it. Let's see what's coming up for us. And I do think that oftentimes what happens is people get to the point, because we need to exercise this over and over until it becomes second nature. But there are types of moments in relationships where you get past the point of no return. You went too far, and now you can't take back what you said, to sit and think. So I always recommend to my clients, hey, when you start to feel like it's going to get heated, because you know how it goes, just take a few minutes, walk away from each other, and just regroup later, and commit to, don't worry about the story about what happened. Look at the facts. What happened? I give you a perfect little story. One of my clients, she said to me, I was upset with my husband because I asked him to go to the store with me. Okay. And then what happened? She says, well, he got out of the car and he went to the store and he didn't open the car door for me. And I just sat there like he doesn't care about me. He doesn't see me. I just sat there. He didn't even look at me. He just left the car. I said, okay, go back to the beginning of the story. When I asked you what happened, you said, I asked my husband to go to the store with me. Did he go to the store with you? Yes. Okay. And I said to her, the part that started the narrative of he doesn't care about me, he doesn't love me because he didn't invite me to go to the store with him, he didn't even come around to open the car door for me. That's the story. That's your story about what happened. As far as that man is concerned, when you said, would you please go to the store with me? Sure. Got in the car with you, drove to the store, and went inside to get what you asked him to get. He didn't think that it involves going around the car, opening the car door, and my love, come with me. We over romanticize sometimes what we want. And because we don't verbalize, because our style is some women's style is they want to be invited. But oftentimes I say, are you being the person that you're asking your man to be or your partner to be? You don't feel loved? Are you being loving? You feel misunderstood? Are you asking questions to understand why your partner is talking to you that way? You see, there are so many areas. This is such a complex area, the conflict resolution, because even when we talk about pursuing each other's heart, most people would think of that as romance or doing something that has nothing to do with the argument. I'm not going to be able to communicate and be loving and worry about my partner's feelings if I'm upset at them. We're not asking for that type of love. We're asking for a commitment to the truth, a commitment to creating a safe space, a commitment to accountability, where you get to choose, decide, and take an action that actually is a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. So also, I wanted to read you something that if I may, about more communication skills to increase intimacy, because I think and we can go a little bit into emotional intimacy, which is an aspect of conflict resolution. Okay, I
Very
don't
good.
see things separately. I think that all is connected. Communication, healthy communication is not a perfect space. Healthy communication is about understanding the imperfections and the bumps of your relationship so that you can show up differently with different set of words, a different language that allows yourself and your partner to speak from a place of truth. Okay. So the more the communication skills that I have here is, and this can be something that can be done on daily basis. Okay. Just you want to create a blanket, a foundation, something that you can step onto anytime that is that feeling of, I just feel a little bit hurt, or I want to talk about something. So you look for the good in your partner and give them a compliment. This is something that you can do on a daily basis to build that muscle, okay, of learning how to communicate in a healthy way. Let's just think about it. If every day you found one good thing to say about your partner, to your partner, I think that either partner will feel so much more likely to even listen to you and appreciate you if you're coming from a place of advice or suggestion, right?
Yeah,
To
can I
praise
just
your
comment on
partner,
that?
yes, of course.
People are so starving for appreciation. Everyone, men and women, are so starving. We will go entire days of our life without somebody expressing appreciation to us. When we express appreciation to somebody, people are so thankful. People might remember, if you express a compliment or appreciation to somebody, people could remember that for years.
Right.
So if you are the one to bring your partner your appreciation, just imagine how valuable you will be to them.
Absolutely. And you know what? The interesting thing is sometimes showing appreciation sometimes actually looks a little more like, I need you.
Yeah.
I need
Yeah.
your help. Can you help me with this? I did a little short live a short video on Instagram the other day that said, your need may be highlighting someone else's sense of worth. See, sometimes our partners may not feel needed. And you needing them highlights them, makes them feel, wow, I'm needed, I'm loved, I can stand in for my partner. Okay, so think of those areas of validation on a daily basis. Praise your partner as much as possible. Take time to listen to each other, listen to understand, not judge. A lot of times we're not really required to say anything. I saw this video the other day where the mom and the daughter are having a conversation, and the mother literally has a blanket like this. She's just listening, but she's not going to say anything. So she didn't want the daughter to see her expressions. The daughter just needed to speak. So they put this little barrier up, and the daughter just went and talked about it in a way, kind of like a metaphor for listen, but don't think that because they're saying something that you now need to have the answer to it. Sometimes they just need to say something. So use active listening also is something that's helpful. For example, if you're upset with your partner and you say something to them, or they say something to you, pause and say, okay, let me try to understand. Is that what you're saying? Did you just say that? Da, 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 da. That way it helps you summarize the things that they're saying. It also gives your partner the opportunity to see that you actually were listening. And if there is something they misunderstood, now you have an opportunity to say, well, what I meant was that, for clarification. To be assertive and share your feelings using I statements. This is a big one. A lot of times when we're in conflict, you did this, because it becomes the blaming game. You don't want to blame the other person. You can take responsibility for your feelings and say, well, I feel this way. I felt this way. I'm not sure why. Because then at that point, if the person didn't mean to hurt you, you're more likely to accept that and say, well, I realized that I was triggered. It wasn't really that you did anything, but what you said reminded me of so and so back 20 years ago. And then I got triggered. Taking responsibility, using words like such as I, that puts you in the place of power for yourself. Okay. There is
Exactly.
empowerment and accountability. Take responsibility for your feelings, even when you're broken. You see, because I think that there is such a dream about, I don't know if the dream is the right word, such a misconception that, accountability has all to do with the place of assertiveness and doing the right things. You can be accountable when you're wrong. Okay. That's when it's going to matter most. Be accountable when it's hardest, because when everything is uneventful in a relationship, being accountable, it'll be like breathing. Okay. It was the right thing to do. There's nothing to talk about. You're just going about your life doing the right things. What about doing what's right when you're wrong? Okay. That's when it's going to count the most. And then, of course, when issues arise, avoid the blaming, which I mentioned before, and seeking solutions, being a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. For that, you absolutely have to let go of your story. You cannot enter a discussion with your story in mind. What you perceived may not be what happened. So keep that in mind. And then give the relationship the same priority that you gave before you met each other. Or, I mean, not before you met, when you met each other, at the beginning of the relationship, because a lot of it is during conflict resolution. I'm sure you've experienced this. It is really hard. I have to admit that it takes practice, but it is hard to, in the moment of a triggered moment, to go, I love this person. I need to think about how to approach so that I know that I don't hurt their feelings, but I also want to speak the truth. There are many ways of speaking to your partner in a loving way, even to say the hard things without creating some kind of, I call it dirty fighting, when you start cursing or saying things, weaponizing the person's past experiences. Like, I had a relationship in the past, where it said, well, you didn't work out with, you had 2 divorces. What's wrong with you? I'm like, well, why would you throw that in my face like that? I have no idea if there was something. What if there was nothing wrong with me? It just didn't work out. It wasn't meant to be. See, but people would take these little things and weaponize it. So not to do that in the relationships. And the other thing that I mentioned on the live before that I wanted to say, because since we are in the era of communication via technology, I discourage my clients from texting each other if they're having a conflict, because in a text, you can't hear the tone of voice. So be mindful that even a voice text sometimes can dissipate the anxiety. So if your partner texts you, hey, we got to talk about something, the person starts to get nervous. But if he calls and said, hey, I was just wondering what you're doing, and do you have some time? I really would like to run something by you, just pick your brain about some stuff that's been bothering me. Whenever you have a moment, give me a call. That's different than we got to talk about something. We hear something that's this big that it's not even what it is. So important to keep that in mind when you're fighting.
I love that. I love that. I try to boil these down. You had so much good advice there. I try to boil these down into the most simple rules that people can easily remember. And so one of them I say, which is you already touched on this in just different words, which is instead of bringing your partner a complaint or criticism, tell them how you feel and what you need. So I'll give an example. A man was telling his wife that she was selfish, and she was practicing this. So she asked him, are you saying that you're feeling lonely? And he was able to say, oh, I guess I am saying I'm feeling lonely. It wasn't about her being selfish. It was about he felt lonely and he wanted time with her. So he called her selfish. So, um, so instead of bringing our partner a complaint or criticism, tell them how we feel and what we need. And then I can build on that. One other point to build on that. We don't even have to make it negative. We don't have to say, I feel disappointed because I need a clean house and you didn't take out the trash. We could flip it and make it positive. Hey, I appreciate it so much when you take out the trash and make sure that the kitchen's always clean. I appreciate it so much. You do such a good job at that.
Very true. Very true. The new chapter, the new language, the new chapter, the new dynamics that can happen when you start to do work on yourselves. And I love, actually, before I even go into that, I was going to say one of my well, now colleague, but it was a coach of mine who does marriage crisis coaching. We're going to be working together with couples in the future. He's an author by the name of Jeff Burkowski, and he has a book called Better Man, Better Marriages. And obviously, when you say marriages, I like to look at his material as good for everybody, whether you're married or not, or trying to be in a relationship with someone, and even kind of goes into relationships with family members, co-workers, your boss. And I said to him, he says, relationships do not get better. People do. And so what that means is that if we are committed to finding ourselves, being in touch with what it is that we need in such way that we actually get to express that, then we are also giving the opportunity to the other person to do the same. Understanding that we all have this power to take charge of what we need. You see, whatever happened to us, yes, it happened. We can't go change it or fix it, but we can take responsibility and work on our healing, as it is one of the biggest things we can do for ourselves and others, particularly if we are in marriages with family. I always say, look, if you're in an airplane, right, and something happens, an emergency, they say, put your mask on first. You may want to put your mask on your kids. I thought I would put my mask on my kids, first to save them. But if I pass out from not breathing and I didn't get a chance to put the mask on them, nobody's going to be saved. So I have to save myself first. This is how we lead in life, thinking that if we take care of ourselves, we're much more likely. It's not that we can take care of everybody, because it's not possible to take care of people. You essentially have to take care of you, but at least we can understand where people are coming from. When we are resourced, when we know who we are, when we understand how we operate, we're more likely to notice where people are coming from, if that matches us or not. And most importantly, in the process, understand what serves us and what doesn't. You had asked me a question on the live before. If a man encounters a woman and he's being vulnerable with her, and she makes fun of him, I explained to you, this is so layered. If you came to me and asked my advice, okay, I met this woman, I'm dating her, I try to be vulnerable and she made fun of me, put me down, I would say one word: run, right? But it's not so simple if you're in a marriage, right? In a marriage, now you got to worry that your partner might have had a father that was absent, because oftentimes when people have trouble accepting vulnerability, even for themselves, vulnerability may look stupid to them because maybe when they were vulnerable in childhood, their father put them down or kicked them out of the house or said something that hurt them or beat them. So it is important to understand where the person is coming from. What I like to say in general terms is not everything that appears to be what it is, it actually is what it is. Okay. So there is what's actually happening. There is what happened before that, because when you're having a relationship with a new partner, you're having a relationship also with everyone you had a relationship with in the past and their relationships. It's a group of people that are in that room. The objective, obviously, is to create dynamics between you and your new partner. But unfortunately, subconsciously, we bring everybody in the backpack that we put on in the morning,
Yeah.
with all the hangups, all the traumas and triggers, everything that was said and done that hurt you, that was unfair, whether you're bullied. I'm not making light of it. Okay. It's a real thing. It's just that we don't access those in the moment of the upset, in the moment of conflict. We're definitely not aware that we're triggered by the past. And it's not to justify that somebody might have done something that was actually not a good thing. But again, in order to be more proactive about finding a solution, we do need to let go of our story and become more solution oriented. Okay. Pursuing the right things, try to understand our partners so that we can move forward.
I love that. I love that. I'll just touch, because this is a really vulnerable point between men and women. I'll touch on that point you brought up about when a man brings his vulnerability to a woman, and a lot of men, like women express to me express a lot that they want their man to be vulnerable with them.
Mhm.
And a lot of men have had experiences with women ridiculing them, criticizing them, putting them down when they're vulnerable.
Mm.
It's not all women. A lot of women have really healthy ways of accepting a man's vulnerability and caring for him with empathy. But there are women out there who will be critical and ridicule a man. I myself have been told by women when I express my vulnerability, and by the way, I put a lot of work into expressing my vulnerability skillfully, which for a man, to me as a man, that means expressing myself, not asking the woman to take the burden on of fixing my emotions. I'm not asking her to take the burden of fixing my emotions. I'm just I'm doing the work to skillfully express my emotions and say this my emotions are my responsibility, but I'm going to let you in on my inner world and tell you what's going on for me. And I'm going to take care of my inner world, but I'm just letting you in to know. I have done that skillfully and been told by women that I am a baby, that I am feminine, that I am weak. I could I've got the attitude from them, maybe not these words, that they see me as pathetic. So um if a man won't be vulnerable, he may have had that experience in the past. And men are uh, afraid to talk about that, afraid to reveal that.
Right.
So
No, 100%. I find that sometimes, what we express is what we're kind of like incapable of in a way. I always
exactly.
say, it's common to see women who are seeking for a new partner. Let's say women who are single, because I talk to women who are single as well. There is this idea that, well, I want this guy to be this way, that way, and understand my feelings. How are you going to, he's going to understand your feelings if he can't express his own? It's like a pipe dream. So when you are looking for that partner, and this is my advice, it's that if you want to be the person that you want to attract, if you're not in a relationship, but if you are in a relationship, you would think that expressing yourself with that same type of demeanor, where if you want to be seen or be heard, then you would voice how you feel. But if that person is receiving that as a sign of weakness, then there's something there that needs to be investigated. And my
Exactly.
hope is that people would look for help, because that is definitely a red flag in a relationship, and probably most likely that those relationships will end up in a breakup,
Yep.
in serious heartbreak. Because in the process, I know couples that have been able to break up amicably and realizing they're just different people in different seasons of life, and when they met, they were really young and they can move on with grace. But the couples who can't understand what happened, that their differences were fundamental differences. It's not that they were even, like I said, there are times when we forget that we're having a relationship with that person. That exchange becomes about all the relationships we've had with everybody else. And then we become saboteurs, right? We're sabotaging everything, because maybe for the first time that relationship may feel slightly different, but we're still bringing the old language to keep proving that we're not deserving of it.
Right.
And this is why it is crucial to find that connection with yourself before you attempt to be in a relationship with everyone else. Unfortunately, in the modern world, we are victims of our own doings and our own decisions, where ideally we would. I just wish there was relationship class in school as we're growing up. There's class for everything else. We just don't know how to deal with people or to understand people, because we don't understand ourselves. So
Right.
maybe a class about self-knowledge, you know,
Yeah.
being in touch with your feelings, not being afraid of being vulnerable. I wish there were more conversations in school, because what happens is we do life with everything else. We learn all these skills, then we're thrown into the world. When real life happens in real time, it's about other people. They'll feel defensive. They'll be offended. Now you can't say this. You don't know how to feel. You don't know how to fit in the world, because you
Yeah.
didn't take time to learn about who you were. So, with that said, what happens is we end up choosing wrong partners, because we end up putting other things in front of that emotional connection. That has emotional intimacy, has to precede physical intimacy. But again, culture is a part of it. We're living in the modern world where people don't take the time to know each other. There should be an interview of sorts. Now, of course, when you meet a person the first time, they may be saying things you want to hear. So there's always that danger. But I feel that we ought to be more open to understanding what one of my biggest mentors, Dr. Michelle McKinney Hammond, would say: dating is not for mating. Dating is for collecting data. You have to know the person that you're with. Ask about their background. Ask about their values. Ask about what do they think about finances? What do you think about the future? How do you see yourself in 20 years from now? Well, of course, we don't have all the answers because we don't have any control of anything, but we can have a vision and have a blueprint of what we want to follow. You see, I believe it's important to have a plan, even though some people may say, well, tell God your plans and he'll laugh, like, yes, because we don't know how life is going to play out. However, that is not to say that you don't need some kind of ideas, some kind of vision. For example, you can say, well, I'm just going to go to bed and wake up whenever my body feels like it. Great if you're in the summer, but during the school year, you need a schedule. The alarm has to go off at 7. You need to eat lunch at 11. You come home at 3. You take a break at 4. You do your homework. And this is just a kid's schedule. Imagine an adult schedule. What does that look like? We need to have some kind of blueprint, some kind of schedule to follow, something, right? That gives us kind of a path to go. That doesn't mean everything's going to happen perfectly, but at least we have a point of reference.
Absolutely. Well, let's wrap this up. I have some really quick thoughts to share, and then let's wrap it up and let people know how they can get in touch with us. And if you have anything you'd like to offer people as well, feel free. But so I wanted to piggyback on one point that you made and tie it back into conflict resolution today, which is, and you did a good job talking about this in one of your stories, but if we're not willing, and I've had this situation before with a partner who she's not willing to tell me how she feels or what she needs, or maybe she's out of touch with it, so she doesn't even know. And if they're not willing to disclose that, if one person's not willing to disclose what they feel, what they need, what something means to them, then that's going to get us stuck. We're not going to be able to work through the conflict. You're not willing to show me your heart, so then I can't connect with your heart. And I've seen that from people who will put up walls. And so everything that you said, and it could be a man or a woman, it's just that my experiences have been relationships with women. And interestingly, in relationships with women who are emotionally unavailable, emotionally avoidant. So it's a flip of what's the common gender stereotype. The common gender stereotype is that it's the men who are emotionally unavailable and emotionally avoidant, but there are women too, which makes it a unique situation. So when somebody is putting up walls and not letting us see what they feel, not letting us see what they need, or they're not even in touch with their own feelings and needs, that will keep us stuck in conflict. We cannot work through a conflict if we can't get in touch with our feelings and needs. And that goes to your point about, well, now we need to do some healing work so that we can let the walls down. Otherwise, if you won't let the walls down, then you're incapable of being in a relationship.
Right.
So
and
that's a
it's
bold way
funny,
to
the
say it.
walls, yeah, the walls, and it reminds me of the box that I talk about. We end up going in and out of the same box with different people, doing the same thing over and over and over, never being able to grow. What I say is tear down those walls, build new ones, and strengthen them. And the
Yeah.
only way you can do that is from a personal place. It has to be here. If you're feeling not loved, are you showing up loving? If
Yeah.
you are not feeling that there is trust in the relationship, are you making it safe for your partner to express how he feels? Because trust is built in conversation. It's safe. It means you can say and feel the way you do. You don't have to become the feeling. You don't have to become the emotion. You can feel it, but you can't have the emotion have you. And this
Yeah.
is how you're going to communicate in a healthy way. Healthy does not mean perfect.
Yeah.
Healthy communication is not two perfect people. Healthy communication is two imperfect people conversing, accepting, loving, understanding, receiving, and giving in a way that there is an actual exchange. You're never going to be a whole person until you understand how imperfect you are. Because, being perfect is definitely not real. And real is definitely not perfect. And those are not my words. A friend of mine told me that. I never forgot. I thought, wow, that's a brilliant way of putting perfect's not real, real is not perfect. So here
That's
we
right.
go.
We all need grace. We all need lots of grace. So I just want to acknowledge some of the comments. Margarita left a comment saying that's why it's so important to. Oh, okay. Yeah. She was okay. Margarita left a comment about that's why it's so important. important to not talk to people about your relationship problems if they can't give you neutral or good advice. That goes back to your comment about
Yes, the toxic
toxic
venting.
venting.
And then working with people that are equipped to help you, that can see and help you access things in the right way.
And I also want to acknowledge Jessica left us some good comments and questions, that most of which we've already covered. But she left a comment here. How do we stop the stories we tell ourselves? So you talked about this already, about you gave us an illustration of how we tell ourselves a story in our head, but we're not expressing it. And it's just our story. So our partner doesn't even know the story that we're telling sometimes. But even before that, we might not even be aware that it's a story that we're telling because we believe that it's true in the moment. So I'll just, Krishnamurti, the Indian philosopher, has this statement that to observe without evaluation is the highest form of intelligence. That's Krishnamurti's words. And anybody who studied Dr. Marshall Rosenberg's work in nonviolent communication, or anybody who follows me, I talk about this a lot, and this is the way I practice it. Can I focus on what I can observe? That means what I see, taste, touch, feel, smell, hear. Can I focus on what I observe? And if I think about what did I actually observe? So if I observe, when I walked into the room, she turned her back and walked out of the room.
Mhm.
That's what I observed. I could easily tell myself a story. She doesn't like me. She doesn't want to see me. That's my story that I just added on. Did I see that she doesn't like me? Did I see that she doesn't want to see me? No. What I saw when I walked into the room, she turned her back and walked out of the room. Practice observing rather than telling ourselves stories. So I just wanted to answer Jessica's question about that. You already illustrated that really well.
And
And
ask questions too. Don't be afraid of asking, because asking, what does that mean? If you don't understand something, don't assume. Say,
yes,
hey, you said this before. What does that mean? I just want to understand it. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so it's important to remember that how you go out of telling the stories or repeating the stories or assuming things that creates the stories is to say, okay, what actually happened and how am I feeling about it? Because how you're feeling about it most likely is the story that you're thinking about.
right.
So those are important distinctions.
Coach Déa, I have loved the chance to speak with you. Everyone needs to
Likewise.
know that we're going to be here 3 more times talking about other topics. Well, we may talk about co-parenting challenges because both of us are in co-parenting situation. We might talk about modern dating, how it's different today than it's been in the past, and what we can do about it. And we might talk about understanding men and women, what men and women wish the other knew about them. Some good topics. If anybody has better ideas, we'd love to hear them. Just put them in the comments, what you'd like to hear about. So join us every 2 weeks on Fridays. We'll be here going live to answer your questions. And
I
I've
think we
loved this
forgot to say,
conversation.
right? We forgot to say that we're calling this is Coach Daniel's idea, the Courageous Love series, right? Because courageous love involves everything that we're going to be talking about, all of the struggles, all of the steps, all of the humility that it takes to really, love courageously. It takes that kind of emotional humility. It's an expression that we didn't use today, but if again, even to resolve conflict, we need to be humble. So
Because if we've been hurt in the past and we still choose to keep an open heart, that's what makes us courageous.
absolutely.
So, Coach Déa, how can people connect with you?
They can connect with me on Instagram at Coaching with Déa, or here on Facebook at Coach Déa, the page that I think I'm signing from there. I'm not even sure. I might be using well, actually, no, because we're on Zoom and you couldn't tag me. But I did tag this live and share on both of my pages. But mostly on Instagram at Coaching with Déa. And just because you asked me if I was doing anything special this month, for the remainder of the month of May, when I'm taking new clients, I'm offering them a bundle of 10 sessions at 50% off. Now you need to DM me or connect with me on Instagram or via email at coachingwithdea@gmail.com. And you can inquire about those 10 sessions. It is a one-time only, but it's something that I'm doing for new clients with a free discovery call.
Wow. 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 That is very generous. Everybody needs to jump on right now. Message Coach Déa to make sure that you can get access to that 50% off. That's a one-time deal. That's extremely generous and wonderful. I'll share what I have going on right now is I'm doing 2 free group coaching sessions coming up on Monday and Tuesday in the Courageous Love community, which is about finding love within to achieve lasting happiness, stop chasing emotionally unavailable partners, feel secure when you're in a relationship, feel secure when you're single, and heal the past hurts and quiet the anxious mind. If those are topics that you're interested in, this is a chance to come check out the Courageous Love community for free. And in the future, I'm not offering you 50% off. That's Coach Déa. So you got to go to her for the good deals. But loved having everybody here. Definitely connect with Coach Déa, at least at the minimum. Find her on Instagram and follow her. Like her Facebook page, Coach Déa. It's Coaching with Déa on Instagram.
On Instagram and Coach Déa on Facebook. Yeah, it was just couldn't put the 2 names, or it wasn't available on Facebook. You would think there would be some sort of a, connection between the 2, but no, they didn't allow me to use that name. So that with Coach Déa.
So this is on. Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
So this is on my Facebook page. So you can follow me on my Facebook page, facebook.com/Daniel William Robertson. And you can find me on Instagram at Daniel Robertson Online. So
great. Yeah, great for my followers as well. Follow Coach Daniel also on Instagram. Great content. So thank you. This was amazing. Looking forward to the next session.
See you in 2 weeks, Coach Déa. Love chatting with you.
Bye.